If there were a proverbial cake for self-righteous, thuggish ignorance, and if there were a cake for ignorant or misleading pop media reporting, the stunning tale of mob madness attacking Rand Paul and his wife a few days ago would take both confections and have a sugar-high feast. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. You know, as many conservatives and libertarians knew almost immediately after the event, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, his wife, and a police officer last Thursday were surrounded and accosted by hundreds of near-rioting so-called protesters as the attendees walked back from Donald Trump's speech concluding the Republican National Convention in D.C.
What's up, bro? I got you.
And evidently eager not to surprise the protesters, not only shoved the Pauls around, as Robbie Sove writes for Reason, the police prevented the protesters from getting close to the Pauls, but there was a great deal of shoving. Someone attempted to throw a bike at them, and the officer escorting the Pauls was briefly knocked off balance. Senator Paul later told Fox News that he feared for their safety. And since Senator Paul was attacked in his own yard by a neighbor in 2017, an attack that was so vicious, Rand suffered
5 broken ribs and bruised lungs. It happened Friday in Bowling Green. Paul told police he was tackled from behind by his next-door neighbor.
911, where's your emergency?
I was assaulted by a neighbor, and I'd like the police to come and investigate and talk to the neighbor.
Okay, where did the assault happen at?
In my yard while I was mowing the grass.
A little out of breath there as Rand Paul spoke to 911.
Senator Rand Paul recovering after undergoing surgery to have a part of his lung removed, all due to complications from when he was attacked by his neighbor in 2017.
And since Rand was present when a gunman attacked Republicans at a D.C. softball gathering the same year, it's sensible to assume that Rand now has a pretty good sense of dangerous aggressors.
I truly believe this with every fiber of my being. Had they gotten at us, they would have gotten us to the ground. We might not have been killed. We might just have been injured by being kicked in the head or kicked in the stomach until we were senseless.
And if that weren't enough, while the new gang of thugs jostled and harassed, many decided to expose their trashy ignorance by shouting at Rand, "Say her name," implying Breonna Taylor, the 26-year-old woman who died after plainclothes Louisville Metro Police executed a no-knock search warrant and allegedly shot her 8 times on March 13th. If the agitators had spent a bit more time finding out about Rand, they might have known that he has said her name. In fact, Senator Rand Paul is the man who sponsored the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act to federally prohibit no-knock warrants.
But they're also shouting, "Say her name, Breonna Taylor." And it's like, you couldn't reason with this mob, but I'm actually the author of the Breonna Taylor law to end no-knock raids. So the irony is lost on these idiots that they're trying to kill the person who's actually trying to get rid of no-knock raids. And they were shouting and screaming and just, these people were unhinged.
He sponsored legislation to prohibit the use of drones on Americans. And as Reason also has pointed out, he's been one of the most consistent politicians when it comes to speaking out against the unconstitutional militarization of local and state police forces around America. Evidently, a few minutes following such news is just too much for those D.C. thugs as they wallow in their mind-boggling ignorance. And likewise, actual journalism might be too much heavy lifting for many pop media outlets. For example, U.S. News offered this headline on an Associated Press report that they spread. Senator Paul complains about, quote, angry mob encounter after RNC. Yeah, U.S. News editors, there's video of this everywhere. Why frame it as somehow some oversensitive Rand Paul complaining about an angry mob as if he's mischaracterizing the people who yelled at him, shoved him and his wife and a cop, and perhaps you did all this to shade the truth. Perhaps you don't want people to actually know that the crowd was belligerent, verbally and physically abusive, and that Rand wasn't a complainer. Then, of course, there's what sometimes appears to be a pro-liberty magazine, but has become increasingly disappointing. Forbes, which published a piece by Lisetta Voitko entitled, Rand Paul says, quote, crazed mob, end quote, attacked him by White House. But videos raise questions. Really?
Move back! Move back!
In a manner similar to ABC News, which described the mob as merely rowdy, she questioned Rand's honesty. She questioned his sense of threat. She questioned what any reasonable person can see in a minute-long video as the Pauls are surrounded, cramped in, shoved, yelled at, and forced to stumble and halt their forward progress, even as a cop is shoved and Rand asks him if he's okay. Attempting to frame this as anything other than it is, which is a bunch of ignorant thugs going after the one guy in DC who's not only tried to constrain the growing police state in the US, but also is the guy who's tried to get the US to spend less money and to get soldiers home and to get a bit closer to the rules of the so-called Constitution is obscene.
The irony is lost on these idiots.
But, of course, this kind of journalistic malfeasance will no doubt continue as the leftists pushing it ride their sugar highs and keep turning away from reality in order to push their agenda. So hats off to Rand and his wife and the folks who have been reporting on this in a fair way. And of course, thank you everyone for being part of this great group of people. Hey, I'll talk to you inside the YouTube comments. We'll see you on Facebook. And remember, if you can share these and hit the like button on YouTube, that is awesome. We'll see you on Instagram as well. And please remember to visit the website MRCTV.org. Again, I'll repeat it, it's MRCTV.org. And if you want some great MRC fashions, remember this website, MRC-store. For MRC-TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.